What's cracking, guys? Razer Vasquez back with another Tech Tuesday. In this episode, we are basically going to be talking about the new generation of laptop GPUs by Nvida. So, if you follow technology kinda any much, you realize that this information is kinda delayed. Yeah, I got kinda handicapped that I have to put this out on a Tuesday. I really wish I could have kinda shared my information earlier, but you still may not know. So Nvidia basically released their new generation of GPUs for laptops. This is their 10 series or the 1000 series. This time there is no M, and for a good reason. That reason being that these laptop GPUs are now within 10% of their desktop counterparts, which is really impressive, really impressive. So I'll put the specs up on the screen right now of the CUDA core count and base clock. I do not currently have that written down, so you could just read that for yourself. Pause the video there. Right now I'm just going to be going over some of the new features that Nvidia kind of shared with the crowd at London last week, so I'm basically going to go over that and then maybe give my ideas on it, or how excited I am rather about it. So kind of going through the new features. They call it the unplug and play longer. Because Pascal GPUs are up to 30% more efficient than Maxwell GPUs, you're getting 30% more efficiency and less heat in the computer itself because they're more efficient. Not only will your battery last a lot longer, but you're going to get a pretty good heat reduction compared to the Maxwell GPUs, which helps with overclocking, which is a perfect segment because these are overclockable. The overclocking is going to differ between the laptop you get. There is a lot more variables to the laptop overclocking than to, say, desktop overclocking, which the only variable is the designer card you have. Everything's pretty much a variable on a laptop. The CPU, you know, how far is the fan, how far the heat has to be routed. There's a lot of variables, so it can reach up to 300 megahertz, which is really amazing, you know, especially for laptop GPUs. So they overclocked the GTX M. I'm just going to call it an M because it's the mobile processor. They hit 2062 megahertz, which is amazing actually. It's almost right under their desktop counterpart where they hit, I think, 2.1 gigahertz, so just I think like 125 more megahertz on the desktop version, which is pretty impressive, but still there's still a little bit performance difference there. It stayed quite cool at 73 degrees, which for a desktop graphics card, that's average, or it would probably gotten hotter if it was a reference design GTX, which would probably hit around 80 degrees Celsius. This stayed nice and cool, I guess you can call it, cool at 73 degrees Celsius, which is pretty good for a laptop. Although this will change even if you have a GTX 1080 laptop, a bunch of variables with the overclocking there. Like I said earlier, the mobile processors are within 10% of their desktop counterparts. So this is really impressive actually. So this is showing how efficient this Pascal is compared to AMD's graphics cards, which, don't get me wrong, are efficient, but they do run a lot hotter, so they're going to have to slow down the clock speeds to make it actually enjoyable to use their GPUs. That's pretty impressive, getting 10%, and then maybe next generation we're going to see like 5, maybe. That'd be a really good bump. The TDP of them, however, is still unknown, so we don't know the heat of them or the kind of relative power draw. So, even though it's unknown, Nvidia has kind of teased some numbers. So the GTX 1060 is going to have a similar TDP as a 970M. The 1070 is going to have a similar TDP as the 980M. And then the 1080 is going to have a similar TDP of a full 980 laptop. So not the 980M, but laptops that have the full 980 chipset or whatever chip. So good TDP, especially for what you're getting. You're still going to get better performance with these than the last gen. I don't really know how to word it. You're getting more performance for the 1060 than the 980, the 970M, with about the same power consumption. So for the power, or what makes these pretty decently overclockable, is their new dual FET power supply. and they have multi-phase controllers and factory overclocking support, in some cases up to 300 megahertz. So you're not only going to be able to overclock these yourself, but now maybe we're going to see laptops with overclocked versions. Maybe that's something that really never happened. If it was just a 980M, you got that. It was similar across all the other laptops, but now you're getting overclocked versions, which is pretty impressive. But if it does cost a few bucks, get the non-overclocked and do it yourself. You're going to save a decent amount of money at the end of the day, especially with how much laptops cost in comparison to a full desktop. The next thing is G-Sync, which on older laptops I thought it was kind of gimmicky. It was still useful on older laptops or the 970 or the 9 series or the 7 series graphics card. I just don't think they hit a high graphical fidelity and still getting kind of within the G-Sync range that you want to be. So not only with G-Sync we see faster refresh rates. So some of the highest refresh rates for older laptops were about 75 Hz, 80 Hz. Now they're hitting 120 Hz at 1080p and at 1440p, and then we're still seeing the 60 Hz at 4K, which is pretty much desktop computer monitor standards. I don't know what you want to call it, but pretty much those standards. The next thing they could do is just hit 144 Hz and then beyond that, but there's really not much beyond that. G-Sync now I think is more valuable because these graphics cards are actually powerful enough to play games at higher max settings and still get above 60 FPS. So I've never owned a serious gaming laptop, but I knew that if I placed it on high or max, even if it had G-Sync, which it didn't, it was still unplayable because I was hitting about 30, 35, 40 FPS, which was decent, you know, for single player games, but for shooters you really want to keep above 60 FPS, or any multiplayer game you want to keep above 60 frames per second. So the last thing, which I know you all been waiting for, are the benchmarks. So I don't have benchmarks compared to the actual desktop GPU, so I may make a video about that, seeing the actual difference between the mobile processors and the desktop processors, just to see if they're kind of fudging the numbers within the 10%. Realistically, I think it's within 15% with games that are optimized as well, I guess. So these are kind of weird benchmarks, especially because these are slightly older games or pretty well optimized games that are cherry picked. So BioShock Infinite, which is a weird one because it's a pretty old game, on two systems. I have two systems. One system is a 1080 with a i7-6700 desktop CPU. That will be the Selvo. I don't know how to pronounce it. The Selvo. I'll be referring to that as the Selvo. And then there is one with the 1070 plus a i7-6820 HK, which is a Asus laptop. So I'll be saying the Selvo and Asus. Just know that they're within their respective things. So for the Selvo laptop, we got 181 frames per second on BioShock, and for the Asus, we got 175, which is really good. The 1070 is very compatible, I should say, with BioShock Infinite. So when we're getting into the newer games, though, we're gonna see a bigger of a gap. Shadow of Mordor on the Selvo is 150 frames per second, and on the Asus, it's 125. And then Rise of the Tomb Raider on the Selvo is 117, and the Asus is 103 frames per second. So, very respectable for each of them. The Asus looks like a better deal. I'm guessing for how much it's going to cost, it's probably going to get a higher dollar per frame. I'm not sure yet, so if you're going to pay, you know, if there's a $200 or $300 premium on the 1080, I really don't think it's going to be worth it. Just down some of those settings and you're going to get a similar or at least better FPS on these types of games. So these are weird games. I'd like to see newer games, even Overwatch compared to BioShock Infinite, because Overwatch is a much newer, more popular game. I would like to see maybe Battlefield 1, the beta, even though it's a beta and not as well optimized. That's a real test for new hardware. I guess if your new hardware can run unoptimized games decently well, that'll show you that, yeah, this laptop, no joke. It's no joke. So, I basically shared all the information I have. I hope you find some more within the following weeks. I hope you enjoyed this Tech Tuesday. I am enjoying doing them, actually. I didn't think I'd enjoy the series as much as I would. I'm enjoying it. I hope you guys are enjoying it. I'll see you guys later.